This is Firebase. I'm your host, Gary French. Well, friends, tonight our theme is this: don't mess with Texas. And the show tonight is not going to all be about Texas, but I'm just, like so many of you, I've been keeping up with the news and seeing what's happening, and that's captured my attention right now. You know, I learned as a child that phrase, don't mess with Texas. And I'm not from Texas, but as a child, I was learning about our great nation's grand and inspiring story of how the United States of America came into existence. And part of that is the Texas story. In my early years, like many of you, we heard of stories of the great men and women who faced danger, who lived in perilous times, who endured harsh summers and winters and droughts, and even at the start of our country, governmental oppression. If you would just, with me, examine our history, our nation has been blessed with people like George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, Abraham Lincoln, Dwight Eisenhower, and Ronald Reagan, just to name a few. I came across a quote from Noah Webster in Rick Green's book, Constitution Alive. When we started our program, Rick was the very first guest that we had on our show, and I'm so pleased that he was the first guest. Our show wasn't very good. Our lighting and everything wasn't as good. Our studio wasn't as nice as it is now. But I was so thankful that he came on the show. In his book, Constitution Alive, I would encourage you to pick up one of these or go to his website for Patriot Academy and find that. Here's what Noah Webster is quoted as saying: "Let it be impressed on your mind that God commands you to choose for rulers just men who will rule in the fear of God. If the citizens neglect their duty and place unprincipled men in office, the government will soon be corrupted. If our government fails to secure public prosperity and happiness, it must be because the citizens neglect the divine commands and elect bad men to make and administer the laws." I think that's true for our nation today. We have allowed our nation to go down a path of a false sense of security and a phony prosperity. We have elected men who do not regard God, who do not live by the Judeo-Christian values and ethics. But, you know, as a child, I was taught not just those things, but I was taught to be patriotic. And I was taught that brave men and women of our nation came together for a common cause, and they united around a singular purpose. And for well over 200 years, our nation, the United States of America, has been blessed and we've prospered. And that cause has been around how God brought our nation into existence. And he has given us an inspired constitution. If we're honest with our history, we know that the founding fathers and even many of the elected officials that have lived throughout these 240 years at one time espoused or lived by Christian ideals and values. And yet, over the decades, we in the church, you and I, we have allowed evil men and women and misguided folks to erase and remove those ideals from our hearts and our minds, from our history, and from the classroom. Folks, our nation, our values, our history, and our future are under attack. Our beloved land is under attack by invading forces and governmental corruption. Open borders and closed minds seem to be the rule of the day. And it seems to be going as if it's all rolling downhill. It gets faster and faster, like a California mudslide that just comes upon you, and all of a sudden everything is buried and destroyed. By open borders, here's what I mean. That since the Biden administration has come into existence, according to a Flashpoint News report that I heard just last night, some 9.6 million illegals have entered our country. And if that's not bad enough, many in the Congress appear to me to be so inept that they only seek not the betterment of our country, but a paycheck, or finding somebody to support them, or finding some lobbyist cause that they can submit legislation. While our nation is arguing and battling over pronouns, of which there should only be he and she, and there's only two genders, male and female, we have become so distracted by the evil pursuits of perverted people to think that our nation must do so much more for diversity, for inclusivity, for... When will we just pull up our britches and say, you know what, enough is enough? We should be people who live by the God-given values that we see espoused, or used to be espoused, from the pulpits of our land. And yet we have allowed people to distract us, to think that we are to be timid, that we are not to have values, that we are to be people that we should just sit down and shut up. Friends, the closed minds of today basically means common sense is no longer common. Don't mess with Texas, and here's what I mean about that. The Biden administration and Texas have had recently multiple clashes over, yes, border security. And friends, you and I both know this. Our border is not secure. It makes no difference how loud and how often the current administration says that it is. It makes no difference how the inept press secretary says that our nation is the most secure that it's ever been, or how many times Mayorkas comes out and says our borders are secure. It is not. There are illegals in every state of our union. I heard a report that was published from the FBI that says that there are, how can I put it, unscrupulous people, terrorist-leaning people that are pushing and operating, I should say, in every 50 state across our union. When Abbott decided to declare an emergency and that he has a right to self-defense for his nation, what he was doing was standing up for constitutional values, not just common sense understanding, but constitutional values that's already printed there for us. Even the Supreme Court in yesteryear voted that the states have the right to defend herself from invasions. Well, I came across a great article from the Western Journal written by retired General Michael Flynn, and he says these words. Abbott argues that the failure of the Biden administration to fulfill those duties to secure the border triggers a clause in Article 1, and here it is, that reserves to the state the right of self-defense. And he notes, Abbott says, that Texas has already had an invasion, and Governor Abbott declared an invasion in order to invoke that authority, which he calls the supreme law of the land and supersedes any federal statutes to the contrary. Sometimes we get mesmerized by the word federal government as if they are God, and they are not God. We think that we should automatically and without question or hesitation or reservation bend our knee to whatever it is that the Constitution says or whatever the Supreme Court rules. In the Dred Scott decision back in the 1800s, which said incorrectly that slaves, black people, do not have a right to vote, or nor could they be considered as a person, Abraham Lincoln would say, well, it's just the Supreme Court. We'll just ignore that. There has to come a time when you and I stand up and peacefully and lovingly stand strong in our nation, and we take the opportunity to do so for godly values, for the sake of our country, and for the sake of our children who are to come after us. There are two great questions that General Flynn asked when he was talking about Governor Abbott's right to take a stand. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. Let me say, I want to express my gratitude to all of you for supporting this work, this ministry. For those of you that see us on social media, you don't view us on the television station there in the Louisville, Kentucky. We've got a potential of close to 2 million people in the Louisville, Kentucky market that can see us. And we know that many of you are watching us on television, WBNA 21. But if you're watching us on social media, would you be sure to click on that you like us, that you subscribe to us, and you help us get it out? Go to Rumble and be sure to watch us on all of those, on that, and share that with as many other people as you possibly can. And if you want to help support what we do here, go to firebasecoffee.com and purchase what we think is really good coffee. They help support us. I made mention of General Flynn posing two great questions. And those questions, I wish that I would have been smart enough to think of these questions on my own, but I wasn't. The first one that he said when he was talking about Governor Abbott and Texas and the invasion of illegals that are coming into our land. Oh, it made me think. I saw a report last week that said the largest population of illegals that have come into the United States since Biden has been in office is not people from the Latin America regions, but from China are coming in. And a huge number of people are coming in from Muslim nations as well. Friends, we must secure our border. And if we're not going to do like Noah Webster says, if we're not going to elect God-fearing and follow his God-fearing candidates, and if we're not going to follow his divine commands, then we're getting everything that we deserve right now. It's vital in this year's election that we vote out of office every single person who does not support the Constitution, every single person who does not espouse Judeo-Christian values, and who does not want to make sure that America continues to be great. Well, General Flynn posed the two questions, and the first one is this. First, what authority does Texas have to defend its own border? And he said it like this, stated another way, what authority does the federal government have to stop Texas from defending her own border? And I think that's a great question. I'm trying to look up out of Rick Green's book here, something that you would think that I could find it quickly or that I would have already found it. But it's the 10th Amendment. And it talks about in the 10th Amendment that every state is basically a sovereign state. And it says that every state reserves for itself those rights that it does not give over to the federal government, meaning this, each state is a sovereign state. And just because we come under one constitution does not mean that we surrender those sovereign rights. That's why the 25 other governors have joined with Governor Abbott to stand against the egregious, the unlawful, and the incorrect decision of the Biden administration to say we're going to cut the razor wire down and we're just going to open up the borders. So what authority does the federal government have to stop Texas from defending its own border? And the answer to that question is none. The federal government does not have the authority because the federal government only has the authority that the states give to them. And in this case, the number one duty of the President of the United States and the number one duty of our federal government is to see to the security of our nation, of our residents, of the people who live here. And the only reason that they're allowing so many illegals to come in is because it pushes up the number of people in the census of people that are there, according to a census, how many legislators they can get. Well, when they count the number of people, whether they're there legally or not, that means, they'll be able to keep legislators in those areas. Friends, this is wrong. If you're here illegally, the only count that you should be on is that you're here illegally, and that there should be means for you to say, number one, you need to get in line to enter the country in the legal method and manner. My wife is an immigrant to this country, and she did it the correct way. She came, she went through the process and got her green card. She got a Social Security number. She pays her taxes. She learned the language. Now, some people are going to right there say, oh, I'm being racist or I'm being narrow-minded. No, not at all. My wife, like so many other millions of other people, did it the correct way. Sometimes we hear politicians say, well, there's got to be a pathway to citizenship. There is a pathway to citizenship already, but you've got to do it the correct way. It's not climbing over a razor wire. It's not paying drug cartels to smuggle you in to our land. It's not coming into our land and committing acts of vile crimes against the good people of America, but it's doing it the correct way. So what authority does Texas have to defend its own border? It's in the Constitution. Second, who decides whether the Biden administration or Abbott is right? Can the states trust the federal courts? Can we just leave it to the judicial system to decide these state-federal power disputes fairly? And if not, who decides? Our founding fathers were incredible men of foresight and vision. And they put it in the Constitution. Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution says, the United States shall protect each state against invasion. And it's not based upon whether a Democrat president or a Republican president says, oh, I'm going to define that as an invasion. When each sovereign state in their government and the population of that state says, we're being overwhelmed, we're being overrun, this is an invasion, and it's deemed an invasion, they should be able to turn to the federal government and say, we need your help. But that's not the way that it seems that the Democrats want to run things. They want to just allow anybody coming into the state, and we're not having to worry about them. Matter of fact, you come on in and we'll give you health care. We'll make sure that you get free dental care. We'll put you up into a hotel. We'll give you a monthly stipend that probably surpasses what many hardworking Americans are having to struggle for right now, and we'll take care of you. That's wrong. That is totally wrong. It's asinine to even think that we would allow illegal people to come into our nation. The statistics that I've read recently reflect there's been, over the past 3 years, going on 4 years now, an incredible increase of carjackings, of murders, capital crime offenses, people just now in today, just with impunity, run into grocery stores or department stores and take what they want and just sort of nod their heads and, what are you looking at, when they walk out and they steal the stuff and the items in their hands. And it's like, this is nonsense. This is madness. Tragically, the only thing that seems to be going consistently in our nation today under the Democrat rule is madness. Friends, I don't hate Democrats. I don't hate Republicans, because there's enough blame to go around for everybody. But our nation is going through some dire times right now, and we need to correct it. We need to make sure that things get shifted and things get back to the way that it should be. Our United States of America is made up of 50 separate and sovereign states. And the Constitution of the United States of America allows each state to repel invasions. Article 1, Section 10 reads like this: no state shall, without the consent of Congress, engage in war, and here's what it says, unless actually invaded, or if they are in such imminent danger as will not admit of delay. If your state is in threat of an invasion and there is danger, you do not need the consent of Congress. Wow. That is absolutely mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing that so many people don't read it, don't keep up with it, don't understand it. We have people elected to office today who have no idea what the Constitution says. And that, my friends, is a shame. Well, let me wrap up this evening here. A majority of Americans, including Democrats, I know I was hard on them a moment ago, a majority of Americans, to include Republicans and Democrats, now believe that there's an invasion at the southern border. Here's the information I found. 51 Texas counties have declared that an invasion exists. Texas alone has dealt with a flood of almost 2 million illegals. Here's some information for you just to put together some of this as I wrap up this evening. During the Virginia debates over the ratification of the Congress some 200 plus years ago, future Chief Justice John Marshall argued very strongly that the states retained their concurrent power with the federal government to use military force to repel invasions or meet imminent danger. Here's what John Marshall said. To me, it appears unquestionable that the state governments can call forth the militia in case the Constitution should be adopted in the same manner as they could have done before its adoption. Also in 1820, in Houston versus Moore, the Supreme Court acknowledged the right of states to use military force without consulting Congress. The court's opinion stated it's obvious that there are two ways by which the militia may be called into service. One is under state authority, or the second, under the authority of the United States. So there is precedent for states to call into existence the militia to fight an invasion. West Virginia wrote, the right to engage in war without the consent of Congress is reserved to the states respectively. That's from 1870. In 1866, Kentucky were in agreement. The sovereign right and power to protect their own government and people against invasion and domestic violence, so far from being either delegated or prohibited, is expressly recognized by the United States Constitution. And in 1865, the Pennsylvania courts, their judicial system says, I find no cause in the Constitution by which the right of self-protection is taken away from the states in all respects. They were allowing for the opportunity of the states to defend themselves from invasion. Here's a question that Flynn asked, and was one with which I agree. Can you and I stand by and watch for another year, or until the end of this first term of Joe Biden, until we have a chance for another election to restore order, common sense through the electoral process? Friends, sometimes I think that it seems to me that people are just pushing to keep the nonsense going, to keep our nation in chaos. So here's how I want us to wrap up everything tonight. Don't mess with Texas, because what you're going to do is when you mess with Texas, you're going to mess with every single one of us. Because, friends, that if the socialist leftist can get away with this by keeping the borders open and remove the rights of Texans, they will remove our rights. We must stand strong. We must stand up. We must stand together the way our founding fathers did, the way the patriots of yesteryear did. We must ensure that our country continues, and the only way it will continue is by bending our knee and seeking the face of God, repenting of our sins and asking Him to forgive us and asking Him to lead us and to guide us and to make sure that we are following Him. Now is the moment. Today is the day. We must be bold. We must be strong. And we must know that if God is for us, who can be against us? Thank you so much for tuning in to Firebase. Thanks for viewing us on a regular basis. Write to Channel 21 and let them know how much you appreciate this program. And on social media, make sure you subscribe. And know, friends, we always target the lies by firing for effect with God's truth, not with man's. Until next week. Thanks for watching this most recent episode. Click below the like button. Provide any comments that you like. Also, we will get back to you as soon as we can after you write to us at P.O. Box 39, Perry Park, Kentucky, 40363. Also, let us know if you like really good coffee, and we'll send that out to you as soon as we possibly can. What's the name of the coffee? Firebase.